On the morning of November 20th, 2012, Bentonville, Arkansas was still dark when the call came in. At 6:43 a.m., an urgent 911 call reported a missing child at 608 Southeast Street. The missing child was 6-year-old Jersey Bridgeman, a kindergartner who had just celebrated her birthday 6 days earlier. In a neighborhood of small homes and quiet routines, the words "missing little girl" spread fast, moving from one porch to the next before anyone fully understood what had happened. Jersey's mother, Desiree Bridgeman, had woken up and walked into the bedroom expecting to see her daughter asleep. Instead, Jersey's bed was empty. The house was silent, and Jersey was nowhere inside it. Desiree searched the places a child might hide. Under the bed, in closets, behind furniture, the seconds stretched thin as every room came up empty. Desiree called her mother, and together they ran through the same frantic checklist again, trying to force logic onto the impossible. Before calling 911, Desiree looked outside. On the front porch next door, Amanda Holly was sitting. Desiree stepped out and asked if she had seen Jersey. Amanda hadn't. Then the call was made. By the time officers arrived, they faced the hardest problem in any missing child case. No one knew when Jersey disappeared. It could have been minutes ago, it could have been hours. The night was a wide blank space with no clear start point, and every minute that passed widened it. Jersey Bridgeman had already lived through more than most children ever should. Not long before, she had been the focus of a different nightmare in Rogers, Arkansas. Jersey's parents, David and Desiree, were no longer together, and they shared custody. At Desiree's home, Jersey appeared safe. At her father's home, a darker reality had been unfolding behind closed doors. Reports of abuse had begun after Jersey was seen restrained to a dresser. At one point, she had been tied with a silver chain that looked like a dog collar. She was forced to sleep on the floor. When she got up to look for food, she was tied down again, this time with a belt. The restraints escalated. A belt was cut to go around her ankle, then modified when she managed to escape. A lock was added. When the belt hurt her leg, it was moved to her waist, not removed. In court, David Bridgeman admitted he had tied Jersey up with a belt, claiming it was to keep her from getting into things she shouldn't. The explanation never changed what it was. It was restraint. It was fear. It was punishment disguised as control. In late 2011, David Bridgeman and Jersey's stepmother, Jana, were arrested. David later pleaded guilty to permitting the abuse of a minor, false imprisonment, and endangering the welfare of a minor. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Jana pleaded guilty to similar charges and was sentenced to 12 years in prison, with additional time tied to a probation revocation. After that, Jersey lived with her mother full-time. She started kindergarten at Sugar Creek Elementary. She became a big sister, doting on her little sister Lee, who was only 2 years old. People around Jersey described her as sweet and joyful, a child who still smiled even after everything she had endured. In March 2012, Desiree moved with her children to a new home at 608 Southeast Street in Bentonville. Next door lived Amanda and Zachary Holly, a newly married couple. Amanda and Desiree were best friends. The move felt like a fresh start. Two young families living side by side, helping each other, watching each other's kids, creating the kind of closeness that made hard-working schedules possible. That closeness would later become the reason Jersey was in the wrong place at the worst time. The night before Jersey was reported missing, on November 19th, Desiree worked late. She didn't get home until around 11:00 p.m. Her boyfriend Brandon was also working. As they had done before, Amanda and Zachary babysat Jersey and Lee at their house. When Desiree arrived home, she went next door to pick up her children. Zachary carried Jersey back to Desiree's home. Desiree carried Lee. The sisters were put into the same bed. Jersey briefly woke and told her mother she loved her to the moon and back. It was her favorite way of saying it. Then the house went quiet again. Hours later, Jersey was gone. When officers began searching, they moved fast. They searched Desiree's house and the Hollis house next door. Jersey wasn't in either one. There were no obvious signs of forced entry, no shattered window, no splintered door frame, nothing that clearly explained how a child vanished during the night. As the search pushed outward, Officer Travis Nichols noticed something that changed everything. A back door at 704 Southeast Street was open. The address didn't belong to Desiree. It wasn't Amanda and Zachary's home. It was a vacant property nearby, close enough to matter. Nichols and Officer Mike Henson approached and looked inside. It was empty and poorly kept, with rubbish on the floor. They entered carefully, moving room to room. When they reached a bedroom, they found a body on the floor. They backed out immediately and sealed the property, securing it for a search warrant. The streets tightened into a crime scene and the neighborhood shifted from fear to dread. Jersey's grandmother, Vicky, arrived and saw the look on the officer's face. She asked if Jersey was inside that vacant house. He didn't answer, he only looked at her. In that silence, Vicky understood what had happened. Inside the vacant house at 704 Southeast Street, Jersey Bridgeman was found dead. Her naked body was in a bedroom closet 2 doors down from where she lived. She was face down. Pajama pants were wrapped tightly around her neck 3 times. The task of identifying her fell to Desiree's father, a moment that marked the family forever. As the neighborhood filled with flashing lights and blocked streets, people stepped outside and stared at a scene they never expected to witness. A small bike sat near the home where Jersey lived. A deflated balloon covered in princesses lay nearby, a piece of childhood left behind in the cold air. At first, there were no suspects and little to work with. Interviews began across the area, including known sex offenders. Homes were searched. People were questioned. The community waited, desperate for an answer. Amanda Holly was interviewed and her story matched Desiree's timeline. She had watched the children that night. Jersey went home with her mother. Then attention turned to Zachary Holly. Zachary was 28 years old. He lived with Amanda and her son and worked at a local restaurant. He had a criminal record, including arrests for public intoxication and contempt of court. His childhood was marked by instability and abuse, including physical and sexual abuse and neglect, tied to a home life shaped by drug addiction. He offered a specific story about the night. Zachary said he woke up at 3:35 a.m. with an upset stomach. He walked to a nearby Easy Mart about 150 yards away to buy Pepto-Bismol. CCTV footage confirmed his trip. He said he returned home and went back to sleep. He said he woke again at 6:30 a.m. and began getting his 4-year-old stepson for school. Not long after, Desiree alerted Amanda that Jersey was missing. Desiree was so upset during the 911 call that she handed the phone to Amanda. Desiree then went to the Easy Mart to tell her boyfriend Brandon that Jersey had disappeared, the same store Zachary had visited earlier. Zachary denied any involvement. He cooperated. He gave investigators the clothes he had worn the night before. He provided a DNA sample. Brandon's work schedule was confirmed, placing him at work at the relevant time. As the morning became afternoon, the search warrant for 704 Southeast Street was obtained. Jersey's body was removed and sent to the Arkansas State Crime Lab. An autopsy was performed the next day, Wednesday, November 21st. The autopsy results revealed what had been done to Jersey. She died from asphyxia. She had also been raped. The details were brutal enough to shake even seasoned people who had seen violence before. Lab work continued through Thanksgiving to build a DNA profile from sperm cells found on Jersey's body. Interviews continued. DNA samples were collected from other people of interest. The community struggled to process what had happened. More than 100 people gathered at the Children's Advocacy Center for a candlelight vigil. Counselors were arranged through the school district to help children and parents cope with the loss and the fear that followed it. 3 days after Jersey's body was found on Friday, November 23rd, Zachary Holly made a move that ended the uncertainty. He contacted Sergeant Chris Moffett and asked to take a polygraph test, presenting it as a way to clear his name. When the results came back, Zachary returned to the station. The polygraph indicated deception. Then came the DNA result from Jersey's body. It matched Zachary Holly. Zachary insisted he didn't do it, but the pressure of what was now undeniable closed in on him. Before long, he broke. He admitted what he had done. He described placing his hand over Jersey's neck. He explained that she died. He drew a floor plan of the vacant house and showed where he left her body, mapping the hallway, the bathroom, and the bedroom closet. He knew details that were never released publicly, details that only the killer could have known. Zachary Dwayne Holly was arrested and charged with capital murder, kidnapping, and residential burglary. Later, rape was added to the charges. The man who had often cared for Jersey, the man Jersey called Uncle Zach, was taken into custody. He was held without bond. He entered a plea of not guilty. Before he was due back in court to be assigned a public defender, Zachary was attacked in the county jail. Another inmate slipped into his cell during a routine distribution of clothes and towels. Zachary was not seriously injured. Outside, Jersey's community mourned a child who had barely started life. Her visitation was held at Roland's funeral home. Her funeral followed at Bentonville Cemetery. Students and staff from Sugar Creek Elementary planned to wear purple in her honor. Purple ribbons appeared in the neighborhood, hanging as quiet markers of grief. Jersey's father, David Bridgeman, remained in prison and was denied permission to attend her funeral. The case moved into trial after delays and legal changes in representation. 2 mental evaluations were completed, one for the prosecution and one for the defense, and both found Zachary competent to stand trial. In court, the cruelty of the murder was laid out in detail. The medical examiner described how Jersey clawed at the pajama pants wrapped around her neck, fighting for air. Her hair and a necklace she had made in school were tangled in the fabric used to strangle her. She had retinal hemorrhages consistent with strangulation. The physical evidence showed panic and struggle, the body's response to being deprived of oxygen. Photographs of Jersey's injuries were shown. The courtroom sat in heavy silence as the reality settled over everyone forced to see it. DNA evidence linked Zachary to the rape. Sperm cells were recovered from Jersey's body and shirt. Forensic examination identified Zachary as the main source of the DNA. Hair found on Jersey was not similar to Zachary's, but the findings were not conclusive due to insect damage. The DNA evidence from the sexual assault remained the central scientific link, tying him directly to what happened inside the vacant house. During the trial, the defense did not call witnesses. They acknowledged responsibility for Jersey's death and focused on preventing a death sentence. Zachary Holly was convicted of residential burglary, kidnapping, rape, and murder. Then the case moved into the sentencing phase, where the focus shifted toward Zachary's life story and what shaped him. Witnesses described a childhood filled with neglect and abuse. A DHS worker from California testified about the pattern of referrals and investigations tied to Zachary's upbringing, including physical abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect. There were 15 referrals. He lived in 9 different homes. He changed schools 23 times. The system failed to stop what was happening to him when he was a child, and he slipped through cracks that never closed. The jury faced an enormous decision. The instructions alone took more than half an hour to read. The weight of what they had to choose was reflected in every long pause and every quiet breath in the courtroom. When the sentence was returned, it was final. Zachary Holly was sentenced to 20 years for residential burglary. He received 2 life sentences for rape and kidnapping, and he was sentenced to death for capital murder. The verdict was confirmed as unanimous, 1 juror at a time. After sentencing, Zachary spoke in court for the first time during his trial. He apologized for the pain he caused and said he hoped the family could one day forgive him. Then he was handcuffed and taken away. Jersey's mother, Jersey Bridgeman, continued living with the kind of grief that never leaves. The loss did not fade into the past. It stayed present, carried in daily routines, and in the absence of a child who should have been growing up beside her little sister. Zachary Holly began the appeals process from death row at the Varner Supermax prison. He challenged the residential burglary conviction, argued that certain information should have been presented differently, and sought to suppress his statement and confession. His sentence was upheld. He later appealed again, claiming ineffective assistance from counsel and arguing that the jury did not hear enough about his mental health issues. His appeals did not succeed. Years later, David Bridgeman spoke from prison about his own role in Jersey's early suffering. He admitted his drug use played a major part in how he treated her. He described shock at learning who killed her and spoke about the mistakes he would live with for the rest of his life. Jersey Bridgeman had survived cruelty in one home, only to be taken by cruelty next door. She was 6 years old. She loved her mother to the moon and back, and in Bentonville, Arkansas, her name remained on purple ribbons in school memories and in the silence left behind when a child's life is cut short in the place she should have been safest.